let's get started. Thanks a lot for joining today. I know in some places, I think in California it's pretty early. Here in Thailand it's pretty late, and then the lucky ones are most of the time the Europeans or the people in Africa that have it nicely spaced out during the daytime. So today we're gonna cover basically two aspects which are very connected, and that's obviously the mobile app launch that you have probably seen in our newsletter or on LinkedIn, as well as the mobile apps are open source hardware. So we also want to talk a little bit about our open source initiative, where I think a couple of you guys are also involved or already aware of. So without further ado, I will just share my screen. And please, if there are any questions at the end of the presentation, we're gonna have time for Q&A, probably at least I would say 20 minutes or something, or maybe even more. In case you have any questions, just put them into the chat, but I will probably only have a look at the end of the presentation because I'm not really good with multitasking. So let's get started here. So what I want to cover today is basically these 6 topics. So there are probably a couple of people that are relatively new, so I want to spend like 5 or so minutes just giving a rough background on what we do, also how we tick, how we started, because that has a big impact still on what we do today and on our views that we have. Then I want to just start off with a bit of a reflection on the open source project that we actually launched at the beginning of the year, what we feel went well, what we feel didn't go that well yet. And then I want to dive a little bit kind of from the top down to the app, a bit like, okay, what are actually the different types of customers that we have, and how does this actually affect our tool landscape, and what kind of changes we are implementing there. And then we finally basically go into really the mobile applications, the new ones, what's really our objectives with these new applications, where are we in the implementation, what are we working on, and then in the end really seeing like, okay, how can we really leverage the power of the community. So just very briefly, how we started. This is a picture I just took actually 5 minutes from here on 5 meters, not minutes, 5 meters from here on my terrace. In 2019 in northern Thailand, I was on a sabbatical from Siemens, where I worked before, and volunteered at my children's school. And they have the so-called burning season. And 2019 was really, really bad. If you talk with people in Thailand, they still today remember that year, even in Bangkok, which is, I think, 700 kilometers away. The air quality was really, really bad and impacted by this. And then, yeah, we started building air quality monitors with the students there. Here on the left was one of the first versions where we didn't really have an enclosure, and we put into some plastic bottles. And then we also really, from the start, thought, okay, how can we actually improve the air quality? So we actually built really big purification equipment that actually worked really well, because in the end, an air purifier is just a fan and a filter. Basically, obviously, you need to kind of space it correctly. But with these units on the right, we put in, I think, 8 or 10 of them, and actually could bring down the air quality in the whole gymnasium to really good levels with relatively little cost. So that's how we started, and then we did a lot of advocacy, awareness. We invited like local high schools from the most affected villages from the wildfires onto the campus, had medical doctors talking to them. We had advocacy experts basically really underlining like no matter how old you are, you have a right to breathe clean air. We had firefighters coming, telling them how they actually extinguish the fires, and yeah, and this took 2 days, and I think was really good exercise. And at the same time, we had a lot of parents being engaged in, yeah, also like bringing this message out. What can we do? How can we protect ourselves? So then more and more schools actually came to us and said, "Hey, can we build these monitors?" And so we open sourced it, put it on the internet. We developed the dashboard, let everybody use it. And when I saw that impact that we can have there, I didn't really want to go back to my old job. It was very clear, like, okay, this is something like where I can really move something, have an impact. So we founded AirGradient and a couple of months after we actually started. We never had a business plan. We had this major problem, and somehow, yeah, I think with this open approach, we got a lot of traction and could really tackle that problem. So fast forward today, we not only have indoor monitors that we started with, we have 2 outdoor versions. The middle one is the latest one, which is really getting into a more professional segment where also like cities can actually use that. We have our own calibration equipment. We have roughly 30 people in the company now. And yeah, basically really figured out how to make open source hardware. Yeah, I forgot to mention. So all of these monitors, it's open source hardware. So all the buildings, like the schematics, the specifications, the STL files, the firmware on GitHub. So you can actually like basically build the same monitors yourself under Creative Commons license. So that's pretty unusual. It works for us. And I think partly because we are probably the only one doing it on a global scale in the air quality monitoring area. And with this, we basically kind of said, okay, like we figured out a couple of things like over the last 6 years, let's call it this way. Like one is obviously how to make that work. So we don't have venture capital in the company. It's really bootstrapped. We can fund this open source business. We can build very affordable monitors that work pretty well. If we tackle some of the issues we have with the Macs at the moment, but we are closing in on that. Also like the manufacturing, how to scale this up. We have a big network now with communities. We are donating actually a lot of monitors. We are working very closely in helping them tackling air quality problems. So also I think this, what I call productionizing science, I think is something that we have been quite good at implementing that into our dashboard. But I think where we still feel we are falling short is really like maximizing for impact. That yes, we can produce more data. Also, we are especially I think this year we have gotten a lot of projects, for example, in Africa, where there's a very, very low density on air quality data. So we are getting better in this, but we still feel we need to do more to maximize the impact. And that's where the project that we launched like at the beginning of the year with this open source, basically platform, mobile applications, cleaner advocates program came in, and we had a couple of webinars in spring this year, and we actually got a lot of interest, I think, with the open source community, but we feel it was a challenging start. And but not only challenging, I think a couple of things also went well. So just a little bit of critical reflection at the beginning here. So I think what went well, let's start with this, is we made really good progress, and I think you can see this later on in the rest of the presentation, with our existing team. So we actually had two more people joining us this year, that I would say with their majority of time actually work on open source projects. I think we have been pretty good in really like sticking to our roadmap, to our vision. There's not much change actually from what we had in mind at the beginning of the year, and then seeing really what got implemented. So there was no pivot or anything like this. I think also what really went well is like actually for the open source developers, they use our public GitHub. They also, really put the issues in there, so there's no separate repository, for example, for our Mac Map backend or web app. And I think what also went well, thanks to the hardware business that we have, we can really fund this people and these open source projects continuously without being dependent on like external sources or anything like this. Where I personally feel we didn't do a good job was really keeping the developers' enthusiasm basically alive at the beginning. Potentially, a couple of things made it difficult. One was that at the beginning we didn't really have something to work on. So it was really like a kind of green field, and some of the features are also a bit complex to understand, maybe for a volunteer who just wants to spend a few hours, for example. So this didn't really make it that great. Our Discord server is basically no traffic, so I'm thinking to move it to our forum. And I think also we could have done a little bit more communication. I think we were just super busy with everything else, and then this fell a little bit through. In the end, I think it's not a big issue, to be honest, because I think we made really good progress, and it's an open source project, so at any time we can actually have people engaged in this, and I'm coming to this in a second. So our public GitHub is under this address here. You can see we have like 14 contributors. We had in summer we had actually an internship program, so we had a couple of interns that also contributed to this. At the beginning of the launch of that repository, we actually spent a lot of time documenting it. So it should be actually pretty straightforward to get the application deployed and up and running if some of you are developers. So now I want to go a little bit on kind of slowly diving into the application. But what's important is to really understand like what is the broad range of actually customers that we have as AirGradient. And we have actually two very important but also very different segments. So we have what we call professional users that are, for example, like startups, for example, that use that make an application in air quality monitoring, that maybe have their own dashboards and that need hardware. It's the whole academic sector. We're having very large scale studies with our monitors, up to like 2,000 monitors in one study, where obviously a small team is behind. They know exactly then how to manage these monitors, and these professionals, they focus on specific things that the consumers don't really have, things like fleet management, network management, maybe more sophisticated calibration features that they need. And then we have the whole consumer segment, which I think a lot of you guys are using Home Assistant, for example, that just, like want to know the air quality in their house, maybe having one outdoor and a couple of indoor monitors running. And obviously for them, fleet management is probably not a priority. It's probably more like, okay, like how can we set this up simple, easy to use application, maybe having also some basic information what's important, what is TVOCs, how can I calibrate my CO2 sensor in the basement, and these kind of things. So in the past, all of these different consumers we had basically on one dashboard. And that's obviously not ideal because you probably cannot make it 100% right for anyone. So going forward, we want to use these mobile apps actually as a better application for the consumers, really kind of making it user-friendly, bringing in all the important features that they need and maybe even a few more. For example, like that you can set up the monitor connected to your Wi-Fi with Bluetooth on your phone and make it just much easier to do this. Things like push notifications on your phone from your air quality monitor, I think could be great additions or features that we currently don't have. And this would also help us then to focus the web dashboard more onto the like professional segment. And just to show this is not released yet, but we also then gonna split the website into two parts. One more, yeah, like for consumers and one more for people that use the monitors professionally. Great. So what do we want to achieve with the applications? So at the beginning I mentioned really like we feel we need to do more to really kind of maximizing the impact. So what does this mean? What do we really want to achieve? And I think it's coming back to this thing when we had this burning season, and it's coming back every year here. But 2019, when we built air purifiers with the students, when we started the monitoring, to really say like, how can we actually reduce the exposure to air pollution? How can we basically be healthier by breathing cleaner air or by being able to protect ourselves better? So the vision is really, or how do we want to achieve this? Yeah, I think awareness is still a big issue. So actually also lower levels of air pollution are pretty harmful over a longer period of time. The WHO says there's actually no safe limit on PM 2.5, so it should be really as low as possible. So really creating this awareness. What we also want to achieve with this application is to give local communities that are on the forefront on fighting air quality. It can be in a village, it can be for a whole country. Sometimes it could also be just for, maybe there's a mine or a factory that's pollutant, and really like kind of creating this awareness in the community, engage with the community, educate them. So we want to give them a big platform. Also, like there are so many people that are living actually in areas of high air pollution, but they are not really aware or well informed on this. So we want to reach, basically millions of people in their language, also culturally adjusted in the messaging that they can really relate to that information that we want to convey. Coming back to what I said earlier with kind of splitting these different people that we have, it's also really important to give the owners of AirGradient monitors a way to better manage their hardware. also combine it with the outdoor stations that we have on it. And but like everything we do there with the new application is open source. And also with this really strong academic network that we have, I think there's a great opportunity to bring also things like forecasting, maybe using ML, AI models onto the platform that then people can really benefit from, getting better quality on the air quality data. So communication is super important. The ones who are using the application already probably saw that we use quite a lot of visuals. On the right-hand side, you see the 6 bands from the AQI. On the left-hand side, these are things like kind of mascots that just give you specific information on like what to do in certain conditions. And maybe you can actually get your phone ready for the ones who didn't install the app yet, because in a couple of slides I'm gonna have 2 QR codes for iOS and Android, and then you can make this and download it right now. This is also from the application where we already highlighting, I'm not sure, 10 or 15 different communities which we have been working with. There are a lot more coming in at the moment. Natalie from our team is actually our community advocate, and she's like, we are like working with them to make these kind of briefs about these projects. They're all around the world, and all of them are really fighting for clean air. Some are very small, only a couple of people in a village, and then we have also larger organizations. So the important thing is really like giving them a voice. A lot of them are in the past have actually tried to come up with their own applications, which often is quite difficult for a small organization. So really like helping them in their advocacy work. And then I mentioned it earlier, like I think what's really important is this, like giving really relevant information in an easy to use format. So what we implemented so far, this is in Pakistan, a city which at the moment doesn't, like the whole country or the whole region doesn't really have good air quality. So you can see immediately, okay, like with the mascots, what's going on. Then on the top, then if you click on this marker, you can also see really like it's like health tips on what you can do. And we actually have in the application also certain settings you can do. For example, you can say, hey, like I have a mask, I have an air purifier, and then it would basically take that into consideration with the insights. Then if you scroll down a little bit more, you have a chart with certain day ranges that you can pick. So you can see a little bit what are the trends, like is it getting worse? Is it getting better? And then we had a lot of discussion in earlier this year. Maybe some of you have taken part in these meetings where we discussed like how can we actually put that into context. And what was very well I think liked by many people was making a comparisons to cigarettes smoked. Okay, so this specific location in Pakistan right now, over the last 30 days, you would have smoked 64 cigarettes. Okay, and I think this really gives us quite probably a bit of a shocking comparison on the health impacts of living there right now. Then we also put it into comparison what the WHO guidelines are. So at the moment, we would be like 20 times above the annual recommended levels of 5 microgram here. Another really, I think, really good chart, and we can actually see the benefits here is that very often during these smoke episodes, we see that the air quality actually improves during the afternoon. And that's often because the atmosphere basically heats up and then it kind of expands, so the concentration reduces. And you can see this very well. So you see the last 7 days here. You can see that actually, let's say if we go at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's significantly better, the air quality. So if, for example, you say, hey, I need to do some exercise, even in this polluted period, this chart really helps you, I think, giving you a really good indication when you should do this. And just below this, we really then highlight, for example, this monitor was deployed by the urban unit, like really giving then the community a really big platform, also linked to their websites or Facebook groups or whatever they use, so that they can really like advocate for their cause. And that was something that actually a lot of the people that I talked to actually before we started with the development was that often they said like, hey, we have so much work as a community group. We set up these monitors, we have to buy them, we have to maintain them. And then a lot of like applications take that data, and if we are lucky, we get one sentence attribution somewhere at the bottom of the screen. And they really felt this is not fair to them. So I think that's a really good point that they were making. So we try to make this app really different and really focus on the community. So in case you didn't download the apps yet, I leave this up for like 10 seconds or something. These are the QR codes. Obviously, also if you just search for AirGradient in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store, you can actually download the app. And what we have there is the very, very first version. And I will actually dive into this now, what we have and what we plan to implement next. But before I say this, I want to actually make basically a promise, and what this app or what these apps will never have. Okay. So we are in the lucky position that we can fund the application and the development and our open source developers through the hardware sales. So I don't want to have any in-app purchases in this application. I want to have no advertisements. I don't want to track users, except if it becomes a feature. So for example, if you share your location and you make your monitor public, then obviously this is something that you share. Also, for the ones who already use the app, you might have noticed that you can actually enable push notifications. You can set bookmarks without actually creating an account. So the login is only required if you want to access your own monitors that have been on the AirGradient dashboard. So it's a bit like, I don't want to put anything in the app that I would not like personally. And I feel quite strong on that issues. And there's also kind of insurance policies for all our users. And one of them, I think, is it's open source. So if we do something that the majority of people don't like, anybody can fork that project and continue it. And we are also actually in the process to set up a foundation in Switzerland. We just have the lawyers working this out, where we want to set up a non-profit, which then also takes care of these applications. So that's another kind of, call it insurance policy or something like this. So to really make sure that what we start here really remains open and not getting, how you call this, and shittified or something like this. All right. So let's talk a little bit on where we are and what's coming next. I think that's probably a lot of your interest. So what's for the ones who use the application, you probably have seen a lot of monitors on there. A big thank you to OpenAQ. So we have a partnership with OpenAQ. They are collecting tens of thousands of stations, data from tens of thousands of stations around the world, a lot of them reference stations. And we pull that data into our backend. And now I just implemented some QA/QC to filter out stations that might not deliver correct data at the moment. So obviously the data is there also, including the AirGradient monitors that community members put public, which I really support, and a big thank you for everybody who shares the data from the AirGradient monitors. Then you can already set bookmarks for your favorite locations, maybe near your house or near your work. We enabled push notifications for these public stations, not yet for the AirGradient indoor monitors. That's one of the things coming next. And then obviously you have seen the screenshot, so we already highlighting a lot of communities. By the way, if any of you and I see actually some of your names, I know you have communities, then please contact us and we work together on, bringing you into the application as well. This is also something we are currently implementing on a dashboard so that people that have a small community can actually, like put their kind of profile into their dashboard and then make it public, and then it's automatically shared in the application. You saw the health tips. You can log in at the moment, I think on Android already with Google, on the iOS only with your email and password. If you have on the AirGradient dashboard a Google login, you can actually request with the forgot password link and make a password in parallel and then use that to log in. You get a very simple overview and a chart on your own monitors. And I think what's important is the last thing I mentioned earlier. We really want to reach the people that don't really have access to a lot of air quality information. A lot of them don't speak English. So we already have it actually localized into 11 languages and looked also on like communities where we have a close contact, for example, the UNICEF project in Laos. So that was one of the languages there. But this will obviously expand as we continue to develop this. So in the next release, and a lot of the stuff is actually already working partially on our development thing, is obviously that login with Google. And a couple of you guys might know that iOS actually says, well, if you want to implement login with Google, you have to implement sign in with Apple, which we didn't have so far. So that's taking us a little bit of time, but we are working on this one right now. Also, we are in the process to implement all these configuration settings that you might need for your own monitors, things like CO2 calibrations and so on. Yeah, I mentioned highlighting more communities. Actually, I forgot to put on here, like, yeah, the push notifications for indoor monitors is something that we want to get out relatively fast, because I think that's a great feature that a lot of you guys are interested in. A little bit more down the line, we have a few prototype already running, but it needs a lot more testing to actually connect these. If you have a new monitor connected through Bluetooth, via Bluetooth, basically with your Wi-Fi, which makes it a lot easier. And then also like forecasting of air quality, and maybe also bringing in some meteorological data. So that's on like the next features, and I'm sure in the Q&A in a second we can actually discuss a little bit more on what you guys actually want, and maybe also where you can help. And that brings me to the last point of my presentation. So the two mobile apps for iOS and Android are not yet on our public GitHub. And the reason is actually that we used a lot of agentic coding, which went actually pretty well. But we would love to have somebody, and we have a lot of developers in the community to have a look. I mean, we reviewed it as well, but somebody who is maybe an expert in iOS or Android, having a quick look, if just to avoid that we accidentally, commit maybe I don't know, certain tokens or stuff like that that shouldn't be on a public GitHub. So if there's anybody interested, then reach out to us, and we can give you access to this. You can have a look. But I want this to be on GitHub in probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks latest. Also, I think now we are really in a better, and that was one comment actually a developer made a couple of months ago when I was saying, hey, we have really like problems getting the open source community engaged the way we had in mind, was like, publish the application, get them into the app stores that people can see, okay, this is how it looks like, and then you will have a lot more interest on people stepping forward. So there are a lot of actually issues on the public GitHub already, also for our backend, for the front end, for the map application, that people can have a look if they have a developer background and participate. For the communities out there, really like, test the apps, give feedback. If you like them, share them. We already have a couple of people that stepped forward and said they can help us, proofreading our translations, helping us in localizing. Sometimes we might even do a few, making sure it really also hits the the cultural setting of the countries that we want to target, and just giving feedback. Like saying, hey, like, it can be as simple as finding bugs, or saying, hey, like, I have an idea for a great new feature that I would like to implement. Great. So that was my small presentation, and we have 20 minutes left for the Q&A, and I will just stop this thing here a little bit and see if okay, there's something in the chat, so just give me a second and I will have a look here. Okay, so maybe I start with Matt because that's easier to read. I hate to ask this, but did a human design a mascot? Yes. So we have a designer, Sid is his name, who is doing all the mascots by hand. So they are actually human designed. I know AIs are getting more and more, oh yeah, Ethan already wrote this, getting more and more powerful, but I think we also have a certain responsibility towards, like the real artists, and not, just trying to clone that stuff. Obviously, we're also using AI agentic coding, but it's a transition. It's often a kind of fine line that you have to walk. But all these mascots in the app have been designed by humans. So I see a question from Duncan. I'm new to AirGradient here, and I want to ask about my students as a PhD students in the early stages. I would like to deploy air quality monitors around Malta and have citizens on board this project too. I would like to give citizens the ability to monitor air quality while at the same time I store this data for deep analysis. Can this be achieved with the dashboard? Do you recommend the app more than the dashboard? Okay, so the app is basically pulling the data from the dashboard. So there's basically, it's the same data platform no matter if you use the app or not. So yes, there's no problem. Like you can save the data on the dashboard. We save in 5 minutes intervals, and at the same time basically then share the outdoor data, and then it pops up on the map, and you can um, see that in the application. So let me see. Okay, just checked out the app on Android. It's awesome. I think we still kind of fighting a little bit on making the Android app more beautiful, but yeah, we are getting there. But okay, thanks, Anna, for the compliments. Okay, so how about the availability in Germany or Europe? Do you already have a reseller network? So at the moment, I think 90 something percent of the air quality monitors we ship directly from Thailand into basically pretty much any country in the world. We are looking a couple of times to have warehouses, but it creates all kinds of additional complexity. To the US at the moment, we really ship with DHL Express. We ship DDP, so we charge the custom fees upfront during the basically payment to our online shop, and then it takes a couple of days to arrive, and there's no other fees when you get it. In Europe, we still working on something similar out, and then we feel we can quite effectively cover the market basically directly at the moment. Let me see what else we have. I'm delighted to be part of people who are fighting to ensure we have clean air in our communities. Great. Okay, so Anna, you said I currently have the app set to English, but I would like to switch it to Spanish. I haven't been able to find a language. Okay, so the way it should work, it should actually detect the setting that you have on your phone. So if your phone is basically set to Spanish, then the app should be in Spanish. If that doesn't work, send me an email and we have a quicker look. Last said, okay, if you're next, yeah, if and anybody who is coming to Chiang Mai, let us know. You can actually have a factory tour and see like how we produce these units and our test chamber and these kind of things. So let me see if I missed anything. If there are any like somebody who also wants to just have a question here live, please go ahead and you can unmute yourself and ask, because I think that was all I think that I had to answer. What I think what could be interesting, is there any feature that you are missing? Okay, I think now we have something coming in here. How about partnering with some online shops in Europe? They can buy bulk. Yes, I agree. Johannes, like reach out to us. We have a support form. We have actually a few people, I think one in Canada now also, that reselling our units. Yeah, reach out and we can discuss that if you're interested. And then Lance, I've checked out the app. It looks good. A recommendation for the widget is to make it smaller. Yes, we actually had that comment too. I will add that to the list to have yeah, like different sizes of widgets. I think also on Android, it's sometimes the font size are too big, and so it's still quite a lot of things we want to improve. I think we really want to set the bar very, very high. Great iPad, Mark. We actually have. I forgot to mention Tata. So she joined us recently, and she is a UX UI designer, and she's currently doing the Figmas for the iPad application. So we want to basically get the necessary features into the mobile apps, like what you saw as next steps. And then go into the iPad adjustments for tablet, and then actually use this kind of layout to improve our web app, because it's obviously more landscape than on the iPad, and then we have a better idea how to arrange the features. Let me see what else we have here. Okay, then I would like to see device in the Kenya market. Are you ready? I think we're gonna see a lot more devices deployed in Kenya quite soon. We already having an NGO there that we work since a year. Let's see what else we have on from Matev. App felt butter smooth, and it felt like one of those first app experience where you just know it's good. But when I first tried it, but the save button was not obvious, a bit tiny. Not sure which save button you mean. Maybe you can put that into the chat. Louis, Android question, does the app rely on the Google Services Framework? How do you have a? Yeah, so this also came before. So there are a couple of ideas. One is that we just provide, so it's not reliant. So it's okay, let's take this first. So you can just log in with email and password. We can probably provide some kind of APK as well. We might need to check technically if we need to remove something, or we can leave it in there, but it should work without any Google dependency. We have only one external library. It's called OneSignal for push notifications, which I actually want to get rid of in one of the next releases, because I feel they might have some tracking which I don't want to see. We only use it for push notifications, but I think it would be great for the Android app to put it also on an alternative app store, for example. So it's definitely something we would consider. So let's see what else we have. On the map tab, didn't know. Okay, now I understand that bookmark icon. Yeah, I know it's a little bit small. Maybe we blow that up a little bit. Yeah, dark mode has been, I think, requested actually by our own team. I think that's also something we're gonna put on the list. Okay, last some handheld monitor. Yeah, stay tuned. That's my comment on this one. So we have something in the works there. Yeah, F-Droid, I mentioned this to put it on an alternative app store. Maybe we put out a survey to the community, ask them what's their favorite, basically Android alternative app stores, and then we can see which one makes most sense. Yeah, Mark, log in with passcodes. Maybe we have to look into this. I mean, it's not super sensitive data typically in these applications. And it's something we can discuss, I would say. And let's see, perhaps keep it into established or yeah, like I mean, obviously a lot of users are in the established stores, but I think especially for Android, I think we need to provide also an alternative. So Louis, on this hardware modular and upgradable, it's actually already modular. If you open it up, you see you can easily exchange the sensors. There are also like actually slots if people want to like add sensors like for I2C bus or things like that. And I think we plan to refresh the indoor monitor next year. And then I think gonna provide more more kind of slots for more gases, for example, to measure, or maybe even some other environmental parameters like maybe light intensity or noise or stuff like this. So that's definitely something on our mind. Yeah, so can the app send alerts when air quality is poor? So this is already implemented for the monitors that are on the map. Super easy with push notifications. You can also actually set, so you can have two different alerts. One, if the air quality switches, for example, from green to yellow, you can get an alert. You can also say every morning at 7 a.m., for example, you want to get a notification with the current air quality. That's sometimes something that, for example, teachers really want to see, that they know, like, do they need to adjust like physical activity in the school and so on. So that's already in the apps that you can download. Let me see what else. Yeah, so for the handheld thing, I think soon we're gonna share a little bit more information. Yeah, so I think, Matt, what you mentioned, I think is a really important thing, which we have been often asked over the last couple of years, like how do you make sure that the data is not manipulated, with air quality, like also when it comes actually from the hardware, from the sensor modules, is transmitted. And there could be potentially even things like, blockchain, for example, to make it immutable and things like this. But then at the end of the day, you talk about a sensor that measures air quality. So you could put it in a plastic bag and the air quality suddenly would be perfect and you would still transmit your data however secure you want it, or you could put a candle under it and it would be terrible air quality data. So unfortunately, it's easy to manipulate that data if you have access to a monitor, which makes it a lot more difficult than maybe for some other like devices. But in general, I think what helps probably there is if we manage to increase the density of monitors and you have nearby nodes that you can actually then see if one node is not reporting correct data. And what we actually saw in the past, I never really came across intentionally manipulated monitor, but I mean, often, obviously, these monitors can fail. We see frequently insects getting into monitors, putting up their spider nests, and then obviously the data is getting very erratic on that. Let me see what else we have. I hear a lot of interest on the personal. So it's basically a small device that you can maybe like put on your backpack and walk around. It tracks you on the air quality on your way to school, for example. Um, So Louis, I'm discovering the app. Great job, especially for a young project in my region, Switzerland. There seems to be very few AirGradient customers, so very sparse data points available. Are there any? Yes, so at the moment, you might know Sensor Community. It's another open project, especially in Europe. I think they have 10,000 monitors online, also using low-cost monitors. They have an open API, so we currently looking on integrating them, and I'm sure they have a lot more in Switzerland as well. So how often do monitors need recalibration? That's something we actually just published a blog post. Maybe Ethan can put the link into the chat. So we see very little drift even after a couple of years with the plant tower PM modules that we use. So they tend to run stable. What could happen, obviously, what I mentioned earlier, that they just break down or insects getting inside, but then you either see like just zero values or you see extremely high values. But typically we don't see much, let's say, degradation on a, let's say, on a slow pace. Great. Yeah, so I think maybe we will send something out a bit on the handheld and prepare something. Yeah, on the BMW 080, we wrote actually a pretty detailed blog post that you might have seen, Roy, on our blog. So we were actually positively surprised that it measures actually pretty accurately. I think the problem with the BMW 080, it's a very small sensor from Bosch that uses actually the like the kind of outside to make the measurement, is that as soon as the field of view is restricted, um, we basically it doesn't report, it doesn't update the value. So for example, if you would have it as a portable sensor and you would have it just slightly covered with your clothes, it wouldn't work anymore. So I think it's a promising sensor, but it needs to be really tested more. So in a way that we feel the the opportunities that it has through the size is a bit restricted because it uses the surrounding, it needs these kind of, I don't know, 30-degree angle to do the measurements. It's kind of restricted there basically in the end. So, but it's something, yeah, I think it's worth really having a look at the test report. Yeah, thanks, Ethan, for sharing that. Great. So tons of questions. I think that's really cool. We are at the top of the hour, so I think we wrap this up. Okay, so why not using SPS30 and SenX? We're actually testing all of them. I think there will be some blog posts coming out. We might use one of them in future. If you calibrate them, we don't see too much differences actually. And even the Sen X and the SPS30, we tested them. They actually are differently calibrated. So yeah, so I would like to wrap this up. So thanks a lot for joining. This was super interesting. And please reach out to us if you're interested to really help. We might also send out another questionnaire for people to show their interest. Also really call to if there are any developer for Android, iOS that can help us reviewing these sources before we put them on GitHub would be great. So I think all of you have my email, or you can just go on our website as a support form, mention this forum, and yeah, the ticket will be escalated to me. And then it will be really great if we can, yeah, just get a lot of community members on board here. So thanks a lot for joining today. And as I mentioned earlier, we neglected a little bit the community. So hopefully we're gonna have more events like this more regularly again. Thank you and have a great day. Bye bye.